Welcome to the daily news analysis session of Narayana IAS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kotavar, and today we are going to discuss 5 most important articles from The Hindu and Indian Express as part of our DNA. We'll cover them comprehensively, and these are the articles which are very relevant for your examination. Now, before we start, we have a quote for you. Do not adapt to the energy in the room, influence the energy in the room. So many people we have observed, what they do is wherever they go, whatever is the situation, they start adapting to it. If the situation is very negative, if the environment is very negative, if everyone is talking very negative kind of a thing, in that case, this person will also get adapted to that negative energy. But the quote written by the author says, you should not adapt, rather, you should bring in your own energy into it. So if you have positive energy, you have positive mindset, if you are optimistic, then you can set the background, you can change the narrative. So you should show that energy, you should influence the overall environment. This is the quotation. Now, before we start with our DNA, a notification from the Narayana IAS Academy. We have already made a plan for total 100 days. It's a self-study plan. So those students who are studying on their own, they can follow this plan and prepare for this prelims examination. Now this plan is available on the application, so you can download the application from the Google Play Store, or you can use this QR code too. Okay, and our 1 year and 2 year courses are also active. So if you want to take admission, you can go ahead with these programs. For 2026 batch, 1 year program. For 2027 batch, 2 year program. The details of this program is given over here, including the number of hours of lectures for current affairs, general studies, CSAT, the micro schedule that will be provided, the testing mechanism, prelims and mains, mock test, everything is part of it. Okay. Now, moving ahead with the articles of the day. The first article is related to right to property and acquisition of property, or to be very specific, it is about the land acquisition. So many a times government tries to get the land from people because government wants to do something. For example, they want to build infrastructure, they want to build road. For that they require the property or the land. And this land acquisition is a very complex process because here you're dealing with a right of a citizen, that is right to property. So we'll understand this part very clearly. The second article is related to Meghalaya state. In Meghalaya, there is a demand to bring Meghalaya under Article 371, and they want the rat hole mining to continue in Meghalaya. Right now it is banned by NGT. So we'll understand what is this issue exactly. The third article, this one is related to nuclear liability law. Now we all know that we have already made some agreements or civil nuclear deals with America, with France. But even after those deals, we are not in a position to have a good collaboration because there are some clauses, there are some terms and conditions mentioned in our laws, that is specifically these nuclear liability laws, because of which the investors are not very happy to come up. The companies from France or companies from USA, they are not interested in going ahead with this collaboration. So government is planning to amend our nuclear liability law. Very interesting article. Then fourth article, there are two articles over here. One is about the budget allocation for railways and second is budget allocation for urban development. So I'm going to club both of these articles and we'll get to know what all is mentioned in the budget. And the fifth article is related to death penalty. Okay, it is mentioned as an eye for an eye, which is the statement of Gandhiji. So death penalty is being discussed over here. So let's start with the first article of the day, which is related to land acquisition in India as well as other countries. This topic is important for prelims as well as mains GS paper 2. Now you can look at this previous year question which was asked, and here you can see right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement act 2013. Now this act was brought in, and that's why in the next year, that is in 2040, UPSC asked a question on it. And it is part of your syllabus also. Land reforms is part of your syllabus. So land acquisition becomes an important part. Now, let's deal with this topic. Let's understand why it is in news right now. So recently, South Africa brought a law in their country. Now that law is related to land acquisition. So government is saying they are going to acquire the private properties of people if required for any public purpose or whatever. And they are saying they are not going to provide any compensation in some cases. That means there is a person whose land will be taken by government, and government will do whatever they want to. Let's say they want to redistribute that land. Let's say there are some people who are landless, those who are very poor. Government will give that land to these people. Okay. The point is, from the person from whom this land is being taken, he will not be given any compensation in certain cases. This is what the law says. Now, when South Africa enacted this particular law, the name of the law is Expropriation Act 2024. After that, United States of America reacted against South Africa. So Donald Trump, the recently elected president of United States, what he said, this law is completely unjust because this law is targeting the white population living in South Africa. So this law is unjust. And that's why they are saying, as a reaction, USA is going to stop the aid that is provided to South Africa. So for HIV AIDS program and all, USA provides some humanitarian aid to South Africa. So they have stopped it. Now the real reason although remains different. The real reason is South Africa is taking stance which is against United States and Israel. Especially if you have heard this news that South Africa had went to International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court. They're going ahead with actions which are against Israel and obviously against USA too. And more importantly, their ties with Iran are growing, and this is not being liked by USA. So in this case, USA has taken this action. Now, for us, it is important to know this land acquisition. We have to compare our laws with other countries' laws, and we'll understand the entire process. Now, as far as land acquisition is concerned, it is a process wherein government is taking up the private land from you to build something. Let's say they are building some kind of infrastructure. They want to build some industry. So they are building, let's say, a special economic zone. They can do whatever. So this process is called land acquisition. So it is important because infrastructure development like highways, railways, airport, ports, all these are public good, which is going to be very helpful. And your economy also get boosted because of this. There will be industrial growth if you are building special economic zones, power plants, mining activities if you promote. But for that, land is required. Land acquisition has to take place. Then as far as agriculture and irrigation is concerned, you can build dams, irrigation canals, you can build rural electrification project. But to electrify, you need some land to be acquired by the government wherein that electrification devices can be set up, the materials can be set up. Similarly, for defense purpose, they can build military bases. Similarly, for urbanization purpose, let's say they are building housing project, metro rail network, etc. All this can be done, and for that they require land, and that is the land acquisition process. Now it's a very complex process because you see, if suddenly government is coming to you and saying that we are taking up your land, what will you feel? You will say that no, I'm not going to give it. So there will be a tussle between citizens and the government, and because of which many a times, sometimes when large projects come to a particular state, they start investing, they start building a project. Many times we have seen protests from the people against that project. Even if that project is going to give you development, the economy of that state or that region will be boosted, but still, because of the impact people will feel, people will get, they don't like such projects. So we have some examples. For example, this Singur case of West Bengal. So we all know about Tata. Tata wanted to set up a factory in this Singur area. So they wanted to build nano car, and they want to set this project over here. But there were protests from the people over there. Then political parties got involved into it. Later on, Supreme Court got involved into it. And the judgment came from Supreme Court. It rather said that this land acquisition is illegal, which is done over there, and they supported the farmer. So they ordered that this land should be returned to farmers. Okay, so the project didn't work out. Then second case, we have Vedanta case 2004 to 2013. Similar thing happened, and here also the tribal consent in forest land use was being given importance. Then we have POSCO case in Odisha. Similar thing happened, and this POSCO withdrew because of those legal challenges and all. So overall, I'm trying to show you this land acquisition is not going to be an easy process. It's difficult, it's very challenging. Okay. Now here is a project which shows the complexity and the impact it has on people or the communities living in that area. For example, if you go to Andhra Pradesh, there they are building Polavaram project. But this project has got submerged more than 300 villages of Andhra Pradesh, because of which more than 1.5 lakh people are affected, and most of them are tribal people. So if you look at the population of Koya tribe, Konda Reddy tribe, etc., these tribal people had to displace from their original location or wherever they used to live. Their livelihood is gone. They don't have anything to do, and most importantly, it was government's responsibility to resettle this population at a different place. That is called rehabilitation. But that did not happen in the way it was expected. So this example of Polavaram project clearly shows how big projects they impact the vulnerable populations. Okay. Now, as far as the laws, करो भाई ने तो. So we had some technical issue. Let's continue. So as far as these laws related to land acquisition are concerned, if you look at the laws that were brought in India with respect to land acquisition. So before independence, at the time of British Raj, we had this law, Land Acquisition Act of 1894. Now British brought this law. They wanted to acquire land. They used to do that. They did not provide any compensation as such to the farmers or tribals, etc. They had no transparency. There was no rehabilitation provision. Nothing. They didn't care about anything. But later on, after independence, we brought many reforms in the land sector. We call them land reforms. For example, we brought this Zamindari Abolition Act. Then later on in the agriculture, we started this Green Revolution. After which came the era of 1990s when liberalization started. And you see, when we talk about liberalization, you will observe one thing, that the demand for land acquisition gained traction because government had to build SEZs, government had to build highways, government had to provide some incentive to the private sector so that they can come up for business. So here we see that throughout this process, gradually we saw that the land acquisition has got more traction. It has become more important. Government started doing that a lot. And interestingly, even throughout this time period, the same law which was brought in when British were ruling, Land Acquisition Act 1894, that was continuing, and it continued till the year 2013. So in 2013, government has brought a new law to replace this particular law, saying that now we'll provide some fair compensation to the people. Okay. Now we'll understand that 2013 law also. But before that, first understand the constitutional aspect involved in it. In India, a right to property was earlier a fundamental right under Article 19, Clause 1, Clause F. It was a fundamental right. But there were problems. There were a lot of problems with this right being fundamental rights. There were many cases in the Supreme Court which were going on because of right to property. Now we have one more article, Article 31. It says that if government is taking up property of any private person, in that case, government will have to provide compensation, and a fair compensation is expected. So if the compensation is not being provided, government cannot take away that land. So you see, even this is part of your fundamental right. So such a strong provision is already made under our constitution. But under 44th Amendment in the year 1978, this right to property was cancelled from the fundamental rights section, and it was introduced as Article 300A in the Constitution. So what difference it makes? Now it is not fundamental right, it is a simple constitutional right. Okay, so this is how this right has got diluted. Now if we see the 2013 Act, the name of the act is Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013. Now first of all, it replaced this 1894 Act, and it said that we are giving fair compensation. So what they did, in the rural areas, if any land is being acquired, then 4 times the market value of that land, this much amount will be provided to that person. Similarly, in urban areas, 2 times the market value will be provided. Then when we are acquiring, we will take the consent of the people. Let's say there are 100 people over here, so at least 80% of the affected families must give their consent for any kind of private project. And in case it is a PPP project, that is public private partnership, then at least 70% of the affected family members, their consent will be taken. So it is made little bit democratic, we can say. Okay, then social impact assessment will be done. So similar to the environment impact assessment, we, before we start the project, we check what kind of impact it will have on the environment. So simply here what we'll do is not just environment, we'll check the social angle, economic angle as well as environmental angle, what kind of impact this project will have. Okay, then there are provisions for rehabilitation and resettlement. So let's say you're taking up land from the person, you have to provide alternative land to that person. Or some provisions like annuity, it is just like pension, or some kind of employment in the government. Let's say you have taken their see, it was their livelihood. That land was important for their livelihood. So you have taken their livelihood too. So you have to provide a job. So government job many times is provided to a person from the family who is affected. Then it also involves basic infrastructure to be provided in the new area wherever you are doing their resettlement. So basic infra like school, healthcare, road, etc. to be provided. Then if there are areas which are scheduled tribe and forest dweller area, or what we call it as scheduled areas, there the consent of Gram Sabha has to be taken. And in case, let's say your property is taken by the government, it is acquired, but for 5 years they did nothing. In that case, government has to return that land to you. This is also mentioned in this act. And for the transparency and dispute resolution, there are mechanisms. For example, they said that land records will be digitized now. And for dispute resolution, fast track land tribunals are made, and within 6 months any dispute will be resolved. So this is how a new act was brought in. But still, there is a lot of criticism which goes on. There are many challenges also. For example, in land acquisition, the procedural part is very much extensive, because of which the process just continues. So there is a delay in land acquisition. Then there is role of state governments. Many times state governments make amendments and they dilute the act. So if you look at Gujarat, they have different laws. For Maharashtra, there are different laws. In Gujarat, they removed the consent clause which we already had. They have removed it. So there is variation at state level, and there is dilution in that. Then there is weak enforcement of this rehabilitation policies. Many times they are not implemented in the way or in the letter and spirit. And because of this environmental clearance part, because you require environmental clearance, there is delay from the ministries and it gets obstructed. Now, if we compare our laws with other countries, let's say for example, we are taking example of USA. Now in USA, they have this fifth amendment made to their constitution, and there was a judgment given under Kelo case. Now, if we look at all of this, what we come to know is that there they have a provision of providing fair compensation to people, and there is a motivation or incentive given to private sector or private developers to acquire land for the public benefit. So they can do that, but fair compensation is must. Now, if you go to China, there the role of private is lesser, the role of state is higher, or rather, there is only role of state. So, entire land of China is a state-owned land. So that's why you can't even go to courts and nothing will happen. There will be forced evictions if the state wants to. Okay. Then, if you look at South Africa, recently they have brought this Expropriation Act 2024. Now, they have also a reason why they are bringing such a law, because they are saying in South Africa, there is very high inequality. There are very few people who are holding substantial amount of land, and the majority is not holding any land. So they want to redistribute the land. So that's the reason they have brought this. And as far as India is concerned, our laws are very good. We are balancing the compensation aspect as well as consent aspect. Both we are managing. But the problem is we don't implement it. We don't implement it in the right manner. We have challenges or hurdles with respect to implementation, which we saw here. Okay. Now, what can be other alternatives with respect to land acquisition? So you can go for this land pooling, which we did in this Amravati of Andhra Pradesh. So farmers and people can come together and they can voluntarily pool their land. So overall, this overall land had come into picture, and now you start building a new project over there. Now the people whose land it is, they will also get some share in the future projects which are being built over here. So interestingly, these farmers will become owners of these projects, or they'll have some stake. They don't need to displace from that location. So it's a good way. Okay. Second way would be public-private partnership. So in case you have to provide compensation, and private sector feels that we can't provide this much amount of money. So government and private sector together can collaborate and come up with a funding for compensation. Then third method is sustainable land use policies. What you can do is, instead of giving the entire land to just one private sector group, one company, you give it to multiple people so that you will have a sustainable land use or a mixed land use. For example, someone will do agriculture in that area, someone will do housing in that area, someone will build industry in that area. So it will remain sustainable, and you won't see the kind of protest which you observe in these cases of Vedanta and all. Now, there are some recommendations just for making things better and swift. First, we can amend this act to make it more balancing in terms of balance the development part and balance the compensation part. This we can do. We can strengthen this environmental and social impact assessment. We can make use of technology can play a key role. So GIS mapping can be done, land banks can be created, so that this acquisition part can be planned in a very good manner. Then for the rehabilitation and resettlement, you can do one thing. Wherever you're resettling people, provide them with skill training, help them getting the jobs, provide them with some financial assistance. You can develop some satellite towns also, so that you can absorb these people. Those people who are getting displaced from their locality, they can be absorbed in the satellite towns. And a consensus based approach or a democratic approach is required, wherein there is a dialogue between government, industries and local communities. So when there will be dialogue, there you won't see any protest, you won't see such cases taking place. After dialogue, you can come to some consensus, and you can look for some global best practices also. That would be a good way forward. Okay. So this is all about the first article. Now let me check if we have any comments or any doubts. No? Okay. Now the next article is related to Meghalaya. We said that it's an issue related to rat hole mining and Article 371. It's important for prelims as well as mains. Now you can read the previous year question. I'll give you 10 seconds. Please read it. Done. So it's talking about transfer of tribal land to private parties for mining, and they're asking about the schedule. Okay, so you can get an idea about this issue, because here also we are going to deal with a schedule and a particular article. Now see what is the debate. So there is something called rat hole mining, which is very common in Meghalaya. You can see in this particular image. So coal is extracted from these mines, and these mines look like a rat hole, and it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Now this is very common. I can tell you, these are very small tunnels of 3 to 4 feet diameter. Miners have to crawl inside it. They have to crawl. They can't even go in the easy way as such, or there are no steps or stairs, etc. There is no structural reinforcement. That means there is nothing to strengthen it, just like any support or something. There's nothing. So sometimes that rat hole, that can collapse, and people who are inside, they will die. That can happen. Many a times we see some toxic gas getting accumulated inside of that mine, because of which also many people get some health hazard or even they die. There is no proper ventilation here, there is no safety measure, and sometimes the groundwater also gets contaminated because of this kind of coal mining activity. So overall we are trying to say, this technique which is called rat hole mining, it is not good. It's unscientific, highly hazardous, environmentally destructive, and it is prevalent in the state of Meghalaya. Now the problem is, this one is banned in year 2014 by National Green Tribunal, NGT. They banned it. They said this is wrong, this is environmentally hazardous, we are banning it. Now after this, the case went to Supreme Court, and even Supreme Court upheld this ban, saying that whatever NGT said is right. Now the problem is, the political parties in Meghalaya, they are concerned. They are concerned because they are saying Meghalaya as a state is very much dependent, or rather the economy of the state is very much dependent on these mining activities. And if you ban this rat hole mining, our economy is getting completely ended, or destabilized, and that's why we want to start it. And they saw Nagaland. What they saw in Nagaland is, Nagaland has some additional provision under Article 371, which allows it to go even against the NGT or Supreme Court judgment, and go ahead with this rat hole mining. So political parties in Meghalaya are saying, even we want the same, bring us under Article 371. Now, what is Article 371? So there is some special provision made under Article 371. So special provision to protect cultural, economic and administrative interests of the tribal parts, or the important areas. For example, 371A is for Nagaland. It says it provides special protection to land resources and customary laws. Now here, in case Parliament is making any law, first the state has to approve it, and only then it will be applicable in the state of Nagaland. So state assembly's role becomes important. Then 371B, Assam, there is special provision for tribal areas. 371C, Manipur, for hilly areas. 371G, Mizoram, for similarly just as we have for Nagaland. So such provisions are already there. So now the political parties, they are saying, sir, we also want to get into this, because mining is a major livelihood for local communities living in Meghalaya. Their revenue is getting lost, and they are looking towards Nagaland, and they are saying, we also want to become like Nagaland. We also want 371 protection. Okay, that's it. Now, moving ahead with the next article, which is related to nuclear liability law that is there in India. So we have two laws: Civil Liability for Nuclear Damages Act and Atomic Energy Act. Government is saying we are going to amend these laws. And why government is saying that? Because we have already made civil nuclear deals with other countries like USA, like France. But even after making those deals, our projects are stalled. They are not making any fruitful contributions because there are some clauses, there are some terms and conditions in our laws because of which the investors are very much unhappy. Okay, and that's why we need to read these acts. What are those provisions because of which these people, these investors are concerned? Okay, so you can read this previous year question about wherein Atomic Energy Agency has been mentioned, Nuclear Security Summit is mentioned. So similar questions can be asked in the exam. Now, first of all, this Civil Liability for Nuclear Damages Act 2010. So in the year 2010, government said, in case we are building something, let's say there is a company of USA which is providing some materials to build up a nuclear power plant in India. Okay. Now there is an Indian company who is operating this particular power plant. So USA's company is supplying material, India's company is operating it, and let's say one day, because of some reason, we see a nuclear accident or nuclear disaster, just like the Bhopal gas tragedy we had or Chernobyl nuclear incident. Similar incident takes place in India. Now, it doesn't matter whose error it was. It was the Indian company's error or that supplier from USA, his error, doesn't matter. What matters is the compensation. People who are affected, they should be provided with the right compensation. So compensation mechanism is provided under this Civil Liabilities for Nuclear Damages Act. Now see, supplier, there is one person or one entity, that is supplier, and there is other entity who is operator. Okay. Now what this law says, this law clearly says that it will be operator's liability to pay the compensation. It will be a strict and no fault liability. Whoever has made error, it was supplier's error or operators or anyone's, it was your employee's negligence, doesn't matter, you have to pay the compensation, and the amount is 1500 crore for any accident. Okay. Now here, what operators can do, they can secure this liability using some kind of insurance or any financial mechanism. They have to take care of it. Now there will be some role of government also. In case the amount is higher than 1500 crores, it is exceeding that. In that case, government will come up and government will make some contribution. For example, government will pay maximum 300 million special drawing rights, and this will be converted in rupees, and that much amount will be provided. Okay. Now there is one more clause which is related to supplier's liability. Now let's say I said that there would be a company from USA, and because the company provided wrong material, wrong supplies, because of which this incident took place. Now, won't it be injustice with this operator? Because it was not their error. It was USA's company who provided wrong supplies. So here, the Indian company or the operator will take money from this supplier. So here they are saying that the nuclear plant operator to seek compensation from these suppliers, and this provision, specifically this supplier liability clause, was added when we saw this 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy. After this incident, government said we are adding this clause specifically. Okay. Now under this, if there is faulty equipment, poor quality service, negligence by supplier employee, in all these cases, supplier will have to pay. So now here comes the role of these foreign countries. So this is the clause which is not liked by US or France or other countries. Okay. Then we have Atomic Energy Act. It was brought in the year 1948. Later on in 1962, it was replaced with this 1962 Act, and is the most important act, I can say, or primary legislation for regulating the nuclear power in India. So wherever nuclear energy is being generated, it is being developed, it is being disposed, whatever is happening, all that will be regulated under this Atomic Energy Act. Now there are some key provisions of this act. For example, it says that central government's power will be the ultimate power. So there is no role of state government in nuclear energy. central government has the exclusive authority. They have control over research, manufacturing, safety, restricted information, prohibited areas, everything. Then, as far as regulation of uranium and thorium are concerned, so again here it will be regulated. There will be some mining licenses which will be provided. So that license will again come from the central government part. Then, while exploring these minerals, if there is any kind of accident or any kind of problem, in that case again compensation is provided. Then control over atomic energy production. So again the same thing, that there will be a license which you have to take, which you have to comply with, all that mechanism. So overall you can understand there is role of central government, and both of these laws are now going to be amended by central government so that we can have a good collaboration with France, America as such. Okay, now the fourth article. Now here we have two articles, budget on railways and budget on urban development. You should know about the what are the major allocations made. It's important for your prelims as well as mains. So you can read this previous year question. I'll give you 10 seconds. Please read. Done? Okay. Now, in this year's budget, the priority is given to capital intensive projects. So capital is being built. So if you look at the urban development part, government has put 96,077 crore 777 crore. It is 17% higher than the last year allocation. So urban development is being focused. So we have some schemes like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Here we see allocation, urban local bodies. Now here funding has been reduced to some extent. As far as the urban challenge fund is concerned, here we see a new fund which is being introduced. 10,000 crore is being planned over here. Now the key development and major targets are, first thing is the metro rail project. Government is focusing more on metros rather than this bus based public transport. Okay. Interestingly, smart city mission was very much famous, but government doesn't seem to be focusing much on this. So if you look at smart city mission or Amrut, the allocation is not that significant, which is important for us to know. Then if you look at railways part, the total allocation is 2.62 lakh crore. Now this is very similar to the allocation which was made last year and last to last year. This shows government is not going aggressive, or government is not expanding aggressively when it comes to railway. Okay. Here the key investment areas are safety and modernization part of the railways, then electrification. 95% of the railway network is already electrified. Then freight expansion, 1.6 billion ton of cargo is already there. So not already there, they are aiming to build it. So this is how the key investment is being made in the railways. Then you can see this 200 new Vande Bharat trains are already announced. 7,000 kilometer high speed rail corridor planned by 2047. I know it's very factual, nothing to explain as such. New track construction continues, 150 km per year, which is higher than this one. And station redevelopment project, Amrit Bharat scheme, it is continuing. So just a brief idea you should have about the allocations being made. Okay. Now the last article of the day is related to death sentence or death penalty, and we had already covered this article as part of our daily news analysis on 21st Jan 2025, death penalty cases. So the link for this article will be provided in the comment box. You can directly reach out to this video and watch it. Okay, so let's start with our practice questions. Mains practice question: land acquisition in India has been a contentious issue, balancing economic development with social justice. Critically analyze the impact of the right to fair compensation and transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Settlement Act on infrastructure growth, industrialization and rights of affected communities. Now this is a good question, a very big question. There are many dimensions to answer, and I think the space for you would be very much less to answer. Okay, so you have to write in a very concise manner. First, start with land acquisition and its importance, or you can directly introduce this particular act which is mentioned over here. Okay, then you have to mention the key provisions of this act which we have already discussed over here: fair compensation, this consent, 80%, 70%, social impact assessment, rehabilitation, etc. After that, the aspects which are already asked in the question: infrastructure growth, industrialization, etc., those you need to focus on. So infrastructure growth and industrialization, the positive aspects as well as the challenges we are facing right now, like the projects get delayed, compensation rate and all. Then the communities which are getting affected, what kind of impact is there: social impact, economic impact, environmental impact, all that. Then if you have space, then you can mention these case studies. At least in short, you can mention one or two of these case studies, and you can show the comparison with global models like USA, China, etc. So this is how you can write a comprehensive answer. And lastly, you can say we need a balanced approach, we need to balance things. This is how we can end it. Okay, now the answers for yesterday's questions. Okay, so there was a question on private members bill. See the first statement: it's a bill presented by member of parliament who is not elected but nominated by president. Not at all. If any bill is being presented by any other member of parliament who is not minister, that is a private member bill. So first statement is wrong. Then recently a private member bill has been passed. No, there is no such thing. D is the answer, neither one or two. Tropics, theater level operation readiness exercise. This is Indian Navy's largest operational exercise conducted annually. It is largest, but it is not done annually. Rather, it is done once in 2 years. So this statement is wrong. Then it aims to improve jointness and interoperability with the Indian Army, Air Force, Coast Guard. That is true. So only second statement is right. Then Monetary Policy Committee. It's a 6-member body consisting of 3 members from RBI, 3 members from Government of India. Absolutely true. MPC was formally introduced by an amendment to the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 in 2016. That is true. This does not have a casting vote. Okay, RBI governor does not have a casting vote. Now this is wrong. RBI governor has a casting vote. So 1 and 2 will be right. A is the right answer. Now for today's articles, we have some homework for you. So these questions you have to attempt on your own. We'll give you answers on the next day, that is tomorrow. So please attempt it. You'll get the link in the comment box. Just click on the link. You'll reach to the question. Just attempt them. Okay. So you can see the question on the screen. Please read it. Okay. First question related to Article 370. Second question related to Monetary Policy Committee. Why it is repeated? Oh, sorry. This one question: Civil Liability Nuclear Damages Act, Atomic Energy Act, and International Convention. So you can read this also. And third question: Union Budget 2024-25, Railway and Urban Development Allocation. It's an easy question again. Okay, so these are homework for you. Please attempt them. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you so much for joining.